Hi everybody and welcome to the Money Man Towers. Got Mark back in. Huge occasion, just like I called it, 2 points, Springbok victory in Wellington. Just kidding. You guys got to have a sense of humor out there. This show is titled The Polar Bear Episode. Why the Polar Bear Episode? Quite simply. Go to YouTube and Google cute polar bear, cuddly polar bear, funny polar bear. What comes up? Beautiful images of polar bears swimming, all that sort of stuff. What does it have to do with rugby? Nothing. But when you see how many people vote on upvoting a cute polar bear, you'll see 10% of the lunatics out there downvoting a polar bear. Who takes the time to make a negative comment about a polar bear or anything? You can go through. So I'm talking about the lunatic fringe that overreact to everything that goes on in sports. Of course, I didn't pick the All Blacks to lose by 2 points. Who did? Very few people, Mark. It was what we call a rugby miracle from the gods.
Well, I mean, the All Blacks in New Zealand have won 54, drawn one and lost one.
I think they've got a winning percentage of 97.8 the last time I checked in New Zealand.
So it's the second defeat in 58 home tests. No team has ever scored 36 points in New Zealand to beat the All Blacks. And the Springboks did it. They scored 36 points. We benefited from 2 intercept tries, 14 beautiful points the All Blacks gave us. And Beauden Barrett left his boots somewhere at home, not even at the hotel. He missed 4 kicks, but it was that kind of day that we said previously everything had to go for South Africa and very little had to go for New Zealand, and it transpired. And then Nigel Owen did us a beautiful favor. He kind of just at that last moment, 83rd minute, he just didn't hear the TMO say 8 and 9 offside. I think it was 1 to 15 offside, but everything went for us, and it's certainly the victory South African rugby needed. The Springboks needed, but World Rugby also needed. They needed the All Blacks to lose that kind of test match going into a World Cup, because they're the kind of team that comes back from 36-24 and wins in the last minute. So, you know, that last 3 minutes was just, I think it's the most intense I felt watching a Springbok game for a long, long time, and thinking, just don't blow it. Don't give away the penalty, don't give away the try, because that heroic 37-36 defeat would have, 2 weeks down the line, meant very little, especially with that doubting public, the cynicism. They would have said, well, they always blow it, they're not good enough. Rassie just had to get that win, the Boks had to get their win, and it really opens it up for Loftus. We did say a couple of weeks ago that we will beat them this year, but I just didn't think it would be in Wellington. I thought it would be in Pretoria.
Well, I never said that, you said that.
You kind of agreed with me and then said, you are on the lunatic fringe, aren't you? So yeah, I mean, you looked at the stats after the game we spoke, it's just...
Well, if somebody handed me those stats and I hadn't watched the game, look, I loved the fact the Boks won. I was cheering as loud as anybody. 1,000 Rand is neither here nor there. And if people had watched my entire video, because I got labeled quite a few as quite a few things, prick being one of them, and that's okay. If you'd watched the whole video, I gave the Springboks no chance. But I did put most of our money on the Argentina game. So again, another profitable weekend. But then people will only remember the one thing that you got wrong. And to me, it was an incredible occasion. It was wonderful. It was great to see. But if someone had handed me, without the score on a stat sheet, and said, the All Blacks got 76% of the possession. They had 650 meters as opposed to 249 that the Boks got.
They made 46 tackles opposed to 235. They beat 39 defenders and broke the Springbok line 19 times. The score would have been what, 60-15 or something like that?
Yeah, at least 50 to 15 or something like that. But I mean, the rugby gods smiled on South Africa on Saturday. It was great to see. World Rugby needed it. Rassie, who's his own worst enemy in terms of putting pressure on himself, great to see that for him. Now maybe he can stop the self-flagellation and get on with what he said he was going to do. It's a great win for
and I think the New Zealand public, by and large, if they were going to lose to someone at home, it had to be the Springboks. If you go back to the old pre-92 rivalry that's existed between the two teams, there's this desperation in New Zealand for the Springboks to be strong, to be competitive, because a better Springbok team, they believe, makes for a better All Black team. And I think Steve Hansen quietly he's going to win the rugby championship. They win in Buenos Aires, they get it. The points differential is too big for South Africa to make up. But I think there's a bit of him that thinks that's just the kind of result he needed a year out from the World Cup. He's got a lot of youngsters in his squad to say that's how it feels to lose, and that could have been a World Cup final. They made the kind of mistakes in that last 10 minutes that we saw them last make in the quarterfinal in 2007. There was no composure, didn't go for the drop goal. It was all set up for the drop goal, right in front of the sticks. They were rushing things. They kept on that one-off runner, trying to break us down the fringes. It was France, the only time I've ever recalled where teams made 200 tackles and then beaten New Zealand. It was that test match in Cardiff in 2007. So I think he's now got a tangible that he can go away with and say, that's our World Cup gone there against South Africa in a final. They're capable of beating us. South Africa goes away and says, we are capable of beating these guys. We have to find the consistency in our game. Ireland, England, all of them think there's another player that could knock them over. So that World Cup intrigue is back again. Unlike Chris Rattau, who wrote on the Friday before the test, give us the World Cup now. And funny enough, whenever New Zealand's media start that arrogance, it kind of, something happens and it goes wrong.
Well, I think the rugby gods remind them that
exactly,
they're human.
You know?
Yeah.
I always say that 2011 final, and I was fortunate to be there. Those last 3 minutes, it was like the rugby gods asking their public, are you sure you're not going to be arrogant for another 24 years? We'll play one more phase. Are you sure? And they kept that ball for 3 minutes before they kicked it out. And it was a reminder of, you're a great rugby team, but your nation and people can become very arrogant and dismissive of the rest. And it was a reminder to people in this country that the Springboks can play. And we can win and transform. And we can beat the best team in the world in their own backyard. And, you know, so again, we talk about that lunatic fringe that I saw on social media, and it was, how can you not just celebrate that occasion? There were people talking about the All Blacks shouldn't have had 2 of their tries. The referees against us. Finally, we've shown we can beat them. We're as good as them. We've won 3 out of 18 against them. 15 out of the last 55. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy the fact. Rassie said afterwards, that game was gone in the last minute. They should have had the offside call and they should have potentially scored. He said, we know how lucky we got, but we were brave and we were courageous. But we won it. And that's the most amazing thing, is to celebrate the occasion and celebrate the moment and then put it into perspective for the return match against the Wallabies in PE and the Loftus Test, because there will be expectation now playing at home, but realism as well, that we got out of jail in Wellington, a jail we never thought we'd get out of.
I don't think anybody thought they'd be close. You know, I mean, it was just one of the biggest sporting upsets I've ever seen.
Well, someone said it's the biggest rugby upset since Japan beat the Springboks. That's how little chance Japan was given against the Springboks. No one in their right mind, you know, Nick Mallett said it. He said, where was that performance in terms of courage and determination? It wasn't in that rugby championship, not in Mendoza and certainly not at Suncorp. They averaged 35 points at home. The Springbok team has never looked capable of scoring 36 in New Zealand in the last decade. So, and scoring 5 tries to do it. So everything just worked in our favour. We got the bounce of the ball, we got the roll of the dice, every cliche you want to throw into it, but we actually got the win as well. And I think that was so important. You saw what it meant to those players afterwards. They're in tears. It's as if we had won the World Cup, but we needed to just beat New Zealand. And you know, Alistair couldn't do it. Heineke Meyer got that 1 win out of 8 and was a 82nd minute penalty.
And Rassie gets in his first try.
Rassie gets in first try. If he's got any common sense, he will announce his retirement tomorrow. And he'll have a winning record forever. And you won't have to hear from Jake White again. You know, Jake's saying Rassie's got to prove that he can beat the All Blacks. And I felt like saying at the time, you hadn't beaten them, mate. So
in fact, he didn't have to play them at the World Cup.
No, he kind of avoided them. So the rugby guys certainly smiled on him. Yeah. But yeah, we spoke about it. Just a glorious occasion, a beautiful Saturday to be a Springbok rugby supporter and a South African rugby supporter. And the grace with which the All Blacks addressed it afterwards. I saw Dan Carter tweeted, what a rivalry. This is why I love these games against the Springboks. Bowden Barrett tweeted on Instagram. He said, not a great day at the office. All credit to the Boks. See you in Pretoria. Steve Hansen said they're a good team. We told you they could play after the England series win. Kieran Reid said, don't detract anything from what we didn't do. They were too good on the day. And
very humble, very humble. But then we said that it's a lot. It's easy to be humble when you're only losing 1 out of 11 games to the Boks.
Exactly. And then, you know, you also you talk about that rivalry. I remember watching Kieran Reid in Durban when the 57-15 win, and he looked more embarrassed that they had beaten the Springboks by 57 points, or scored 57 than we looked. And he just said,
did we get 15 that day?
15, 5 penalties.
Okay.
And he said this shouldn't happen. I remember Dan Carter tweeting as well, I just saw the score. It's wrong. 57 against the Springboks. You know?
Well, what I loved...
And then they did it another year.
What I loved was the game was going too planned from a betting point of view, 12-0, and I just thought, and I know, I mean, I I went outside and did some gardening. I think a lot of people did. I think, but they manned up. I mean, Khaleesi had a strong game as captain, which was my criticism the previous week, and I think that game makes up for the two losses in a way to Australia and Argentina. It doesn't reignite. I mean, I see a headline, everybody looking for some clickbait this morning, reigniting the championship. It doesn't reignite the championship. It's over. But that doesn't matter. I mean, we beat the All Blacks, and we have a chance to beat them again in Pretoria.
I think we know we can beat Argentina. We've done it often. We know we can beat Australia. We've done it often. England series was a big one because they were a good side, England, to have won that series, to go 2-0 up, which was an incredible start for a new squad. I think he blooded 12 or 13 players in that series and a new coach. And then to beat the All Blacks this year in New Zealand. Those were the two big markers going into that end of year tour. So they go to the World Cup knowing that they've beat a side that was consistently unbeaten over a 3-year period, that was top in the North, and they've beaten the best team in the world in their own backyard, and they created history by the tries they scored, the points they scored, and the way they did it. And that is something to build on. Because that would always have been the doubt going to the World Cup and saying, oh, you've knocked over Argentina, you've knocked over Wales, you've knocked over France, but you haven't knocked over the All Blacks. So end of year tour will be a very different challenge again.
I mean, they have knocked over Wales.
I was going to say that. I had to go back to pre-isolation for that one. But it's, it's just
no, but I get your point.
It's an important result, and it ties in with what we said about that perspective. Let's just calm it down a bit. Let's enjoy it. Yeah. And one of the New Zealand writers wrote, the All Blacks didn't become a bad team because they lost by 2 points and Beauden Barrett hit the post twice. Yeah. The Springboks are growing into a very good team, as are Ireland, as are England. Wales have improved tremendously. Scotland's improved. You got the Wallabies that can still knock you over on a good day. So I thought this match put us back into that chasing pack. Yeah. Between 2 and 6. Where if we had lost badly again, we would have really been a 7 or 8 team. And that's what we take from it. But what an enjoyable rugby match as a neutral. And just what an enjoyable occasion. I still can't believe what I read on social media. People condemning our defense.
Anti-social media.
Having a go at the All Blacks, then having a go at Nigel Owens, saying he cost us. This finally the All Blacks, I read some people wrote that finally the All Blacks are officiated the proper way and we beat them. So it should be every week. No, it's not. They lose now, I think 11 out of the last 114. It's because they're a good team, an exceptional team. And we need to find that consistency in how we play and stop blaming referees and stop blaming everything else. And if we can put in that kind of courageous performance aligned with the skill sets that's there and an improvement on defense, because technically we are very flawed. 19 line breaks and conceded 6 tries. Ordinarily you'd say, well, this team doesn't tackle. But take those elements with realism at home and just keep on performing. We go to that World Cup as confident as any team could be that in a one-off, we can knock over the best team in the world.
No, that's true. And for one of my punters this weekend, they sent me a betting slip where they'd put 1,500 Rand on Argentina onto South Africa. That got them back 61,500. Wasn't my advice they took. They obviously took their own advice. And people need to put things in perspective, keep their feet on the ground, and just enjoy it. I mean, it's a sport. It's an event. It's a sporting event, and let's hope that they can do it again in Pretoria in a couple of weeks.
And just to touch on the fine lines, you talk about the betting and kind of giving your punters the options. 23-19, Israel Folaui's away. He just has to offload. Australia wins it. He takes the tackle. Argentina win it. The money's safe. That's the fine line when it comes to the spreads that you're betting on. And a lot of punters also don't understand that.
No, there's never a dead play in sports when you're playing with the handicap. If we look at let's look at it from an All Black point of view. One of the worst inbounds line-out throws I've ever seen from broken play. Great opportunistic try, and then again 2 huge mistakes from the All Blacks. And we said that they would have to make mistakes. They'd have to play poorly. I don't think that they played poorly. They just never been in a position in a long time where they were down with no time on the clock, and they look like schoolboys knocking on and making those mistakes. It was nice to see that team make those mistakes for us to come through and win the game.
And I think Hansen said also he thinks the 12 points early on took a lot out of the intensity because they thought it would be a 40-pointer. And then they turned 21-17 down, 24-17 down, and they tossed an intercept a minute into the second half. There was this casualness about their play that you don't normally see when they play South Africa. And it was, I think, from about the 50th minute onwards, it was just one team in it at 36-24. It was New Zealand, and they were on our try line for the rest of the match. And they got a couple of tries, and they just couldn't get that last one, which I think would have just been a travesty as well. Had they got it, it would have been typical New Zealand. They went 37-36, and we just had to get it, and we just hung on. Thank goodness to the rugby gods who finally smiled on us. But yeah, we keep on saying it, it's just a joyous occasion to celebrate.
Indeed it is, and it's been what a great weekend for rugby, including Argentina beating Australia. Means
anyone beating Australia is a great weekend.
True. Well, thanks for coming in, Mark, and
thank you.
Thanks for fronting up. And when's the next game?
2 weeks' time, Port Elizabeth. It's the Mediva test. The Wallabies against the Springboks. It's going to be a sold-out crowd as well. And then we know that Loftus will finally be sold out. 8th of October. I think it's the 8th.
I just bought 20 tickets for 20 corporate box tickets for the All Black.
Are your Argentina winners?
No, so what I'm going to say is, because we know most people don't have the attention span anymore to watch more than a 5-minute video. So anybody that does watch the video, the one that comes closest to predicting the score, Australia, South Africa score in 2 weeks' time, put the score on my Money Man Facebook page, and whoever gets the closest, I'll invite you and your missus or a mate to the All Black test in Loftus. So give it a shot, guys. Hopefully see you there. Thanks, Mark.